Hello and welcome back to Talking Events. Today we speak to Ian Solomon from Hyve, Piers Kelly from Reed Exhibitions, Kerrie Kemp from Informa Markets and Verena Lester from Clarion Events on how they picked their teams to deliver the pilot and how they're expecting the all-secure standard to change their organisations as well as their expectations for the year ahead. Enjoy.
Thank you all for joining me. Before we talk about the pilot, I wanted to kind of talk about the all-secure standard, and I'm referring to this as a triumph of collaboration because I think that's really what this was. How important do you think it is to have a kind of blueprint for the industry?
I think having a blueprint is essential, really. I think for us all to be on the same page is absolutely critical. I think if you have lots of different people trying to do different things in different ways, it will confuse the suppliers, it will confuse other organizers, it will confuse the venues, it'll just confuse everyone. So I think having a seamless standard is much easier, working together.
Honestly, I think it's critical because in the current situation that we're in, I think success for us all individually is that the whole industry gets back working together. You know, venues are busy, customers get back into the habit of coming to events, and they're not just coming to ours, you know, they're going to other people's events as well. And so I think the more that we do to work together and agree industry-wide what our blueprint is, what our best practice is critical really for us to succeed.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Piers. I think that we've spoken about this for a long time within operations. We've had the sort of cross association working groups for quite a number of years, and we've really seen the power of when we come together as a group and when we can agree consistent approaches and processes and technologies that sit behind those, it can be hugely beneficial to us as an industry. So I just hope that we learn going forward and that we keep applying those same tactics, I guess, to everything else that we look to do once we do return to physical events.
If you see the events industry as a huge patchwork quilt that we all sort of make up part of, each different organiser and each different event uses a different section of that patchwork quilt, but quite a lot of those sections overlap. And it really doesn't help the suppliers, it doesn't help the venues, it doesn't help our exhibitors if they're going to different events and having different rules. And so that's really the power of what we do within our operations community in this industry, is try and align where we can in order that we can all move in the same direction. It's so much easier to communicate it and then to ensure that everyone can sort of plan efficiently for it. It's no good for a contractor to have to do something differently on a different event, and people need to be able to work consistently.
Something that came up on the session earlier with Chris and Rachel and Andrew, where we were talking about the all-secure standard, we have to almost see this as a living document. It's something that we're going to have to keep amending and keep working on. Do you think it could be relevant long-term? Absolutely.
I mean, I think all credit to the originators of the standard. But the beauty of the standard is that it's an approach based on risk assessment. So there's no definites anywhere. It's absolute guidance. And based on risk assessment, we all appreciate that in essence is therefore dynamic. Every event is different. So even within the all-secure standard now, it's not to say that every single measure is required or relevant to each event. So the beauty of the all-secure standard is that it is based on risk assessment. It's based on a professional approach and understanding of management of those risks. But also that therefore allows us not only to add new considerations in as we go, but also remove some of the measures that we're currently talking about as and when they become redundant.
Yeah, I agree. I think there are things, even from the early days when we'd originally put masks in there as something that we wanted to encourage, and the UK government then decided to remove that. And just a couple of days before we actually launched the Secure Expo, they mandated it indoors. So that's how quickly things change. And I think, like Ian said, I completely agree. It's risk assessed. It depends on your space, on your environment, and what you're bringing into that space. And I suppose the beauty of what we do is that we build it all. We build it, or our exhibitors build it, or we create that space ourselves. And how each business creates that is going to be different each time. And also, I think different regions will use it differently. You know, we talk a lot about the UK, but actually the All Secure is actually an international piece of work that applies across the globe, really. And in different parts of the globe, we'll see different variances or variations within what people are doing, because they're at different stages of COVID infection, for example. So yeah, very flexible, and it gives us the ability to change and flex as it is. But I do think a lot of it will remain for a long while still.
Off the back of the All Secure standard internally at Informa, then we then turned that into an SOP, so a standard operating procedure, which we used in the EMEA region, and that is down for a renewal or a review within 6 months. So, and that was 6 months from when it was written. So that's coming up thick and fast at the early part of the year. I think even now, having got 2 events under our belt in the region, in Egypt and Dubai most recently, there are things within that we would obviously review or adapt slightly based on those things. But I guess it's like most things, it's like your risk assessment. It should always be a living and breathing document. It shouldn't be something that you just fill out, put in a box and then never go back to again. It should be something that is constantly adapted and evolved as your kind of planning kind of moves through the cycle.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think, you know, there's so much, I guess, that we still don't know about COVID. It's quite new for all of us. So, you know, All Secure was a good start. But as you say, there's now, you know, vaccines coming out, there's testing. So it will just be an evolving document. And I think as we learn about those new areas and we need to incorporate some of that into our events, then the standard will expand to cover those areas that are new and topical. You know, I guess another analogy would be something like the e-guide, you know, that has been running for years, you know, and it's a common standard that the industry uses. And it was much smaller when it first started, but it started with the top issues that we had to deal with at that point, the base sort of venue rules and regs. But there's plenty of new content that's been added to that over the years as those things have emerged and become more important. And I guess All Secure will probably just evolve in the same way.
The All Secure standard was accepted. It was time to kind of put it into practice. At what stage were you approached by the EIA?
Do you know what? It seems like so long ago. It seems like years ago now. I've been through so much this year. I can't quite remember, but it was, I think at the time, it was relatively early. And at the time, as the industry was on a bit of a pause, then I think there were lots of organisations, all of us were reaching out to our various, you know, our individual associations, offering help, either whether it's expertise, or, you know, and when the news came out about pilots and the potential to run pilot events, I think there were quite a lot of offers for help from around the industry. So yeah, we jumped on board as quick as we could, like I think many others did.
I think, well, we'd had the document, as you say, on something like version 13, and we needed a go date, right? I suppose that was the most important thing. And for as much as the government liked what they'd seen on paper, I think there needed to be some kind of, well, let's see this working in true life, or as close to true life as we could make it. So I suppose, yeah, well, very last minute. I suppose the date didn't come until the very last minute. We were sort of thinking, is it going to be next week? Are they going to give us 5 days, 10 days, a month? Yeah, I can't quite remember, but I think obviously after it was approved by the government, and before they would sign off on a go date. So
yeah, and
sometime there in between.
My recollection is almost the main challenge of that was the fact that we've been expecting these go dates for quite some time, and there was delay on that. We were looking to try and get the pilot out of the way as early as possible to make the potential restart of events. We were looking hopefully at October at one point, and so the further into August we got with very little comment became a little bit concerning. But I seem to remember we were given about 3 weeks from the first official meeting from a dead start to the live date. So not a lot of time, and fortunately we'd all been, well in contact and communicating with each other all year. So actually it wasn't like given 3 weeks to work out how we do something. We already knew how we would do it by then. It was more a case of, right, we've now got 3 weeks to turn this into something.
Similar. So from my perspective, I remember it being in the summer, and the only reason I remember is I was literally packing for our summer camping trip when my mobile went, and it was Chris. But yeah, same thing. I think all along we've kind of always been very open. As I say, I've been an active member on a lot of the working groups for a number of years, so I'm always open to kind of rolling sleeves up and getting involved with anything from an industry perspective. So when Chris asked if we would be interested in collaborating with with Piers and Ian and V's team to pull it together, it's a bit of a no-brainer. It's just, absolutely.
It's rare to see all four of you working so closely together. What was the importance of collaboration on the project? Kerrie?
I think it's like anything, isn't it? I mean, our industry is built on people, ultimately, isn't it? And it's built on our ability to pull things together out of a hat on a very tight turnaround. I mean, ultimately, once the group was assembled, I think the turnaround from start to finish was 2 weeks, something like that, between this is what we're doing and this is the day that we'll be at the venue doing it. So, the key to the success for us all is always pulling together those relationships, the different contractors that we utilise and each other. So, and ops people are great at getting the best out of multiple parties at once and kind of being the conductor for the orchestra, I guess.
Yeah, and I'd say, don't tell anyone, but it's actually not that rare. So we do talk to each other, not every day or every week, but it's not uncommon. I mean, for years we've been working together, which will give credit to Simon Garrett for kicking it off, but we produced the G Guide as an international sort of safety standard, because he could see we had similar issues, but we weren't talking to each other, so he pulled us together as a group. And since then, it's been fairly regular, and it's not that uncommon now that, we don't talk about anything, obviously, that is competitive, but for issues like health and safety or security, where actually providing, a best practice standard across the industry makes it easy for everybody to work in the same way, we'll quite often be in touch, email the rest of the group and say, well, I'm developing this briefing note, or I need to work out a template for this. Have you done it? How have you done it? Has anybody got any best practice that I can nick? So it's not as rare as you'd think it would be.
I suppose the main thing is that we knew that failure wasn't an option, and I think actually through the AO we already have strong relationships. We already have groups where we share and collaborate anyway. I think this was just another level of collaboration, and I think we had a very focused group in terms of we knew what we needed to achieve, and I think different to the normal groups that we normally attend, where we have lots of subjects that we want to discuss, and maybe different people have different topics that they want to bring to the table because they have different issues on their different events. I think in this occasion, everyone was completely aligned on what the issue was and what we needed to do. And I think that made it easier to collaborate. And there was no issue. We just needed to get this done. Yeah.
And I'd agree with that. I mean, at the end of the day, you say it's rare. I don't think it is rare. I don't think it's rare for our four companies and others to be collaborative. I think from the outside it would be obvious we're all competitors, but we're not all competitors. We operate in similar spaces. Sometimes we're competitors, but more often than not, it doesn't help any of us to see another exhibition fail. We all need exhibitions to be a strong medium, and thankfully it remains a strong medium, and we're really proud to work in that environment. So it's not, there are fine lines. We obviously don't collaborate commercially very often. That wouldn't be something that would be beneficial to any of us, and actually it would be a lot less interesting if we did collaborate and everything. We'd probably be falling foul of whatever rules there are out there. Mm-hmm. But from an operational point of view, we are not We are not exclusive like that. In fact, we all gain, and we enable our businesses to gain from working together. And I think you can, especially with the operational community, where you look at things like regulation changes, where we don't always wait for regulations, but a couple of really good examples of that would be when the electrical regulations changed, would be when CDM was introduced. But we also identify our own focuses. So stop the drop. We identified that working from height was one of the biggest risk factors within our environments, and actually unprompted, we worked together to do that from within our sort of association-led groups. But we're not competitors, Verena and myself and Piers and myself and Kerrie. We're definitely friends, but we've got so much respect for each other, and we all gain and we'll share where we're talking about putting things in place, systematic things, blueprints and procedures that will enable all of our events to be safer, but also to work more smoothly.
I remember it was potentially around August time when I had the call from Jason Stead to say, we've been asked to be involved in this pilot. Can you prepare something to pitch to you? And I remember feeling quite anxious about this because of the severity of and kind of scale of this event and what it meant actually kind of to the industry. So presenting that to you was daunting, but actually as soon as that kind of conversation kicked off, you could see everybody was willing this to be a success. Everything was not a challenge, not a criticism. It was a, how can we all work together to get this done properly and to the best of our ability as an industry? And I saw that in your teams, and a credit to you for the people who were on the ground and really kind of got stuck in to deliver such a successful event. How did you put together a team on such an important event?
Well, I think for us internally at that point, we were hoping to run World Travel Market. So we had the whole team geared around, Jess, who was our ops manager for that event, and was furthest ahead in the planning, and everybody else was trying to make that a success. So she was the most in the thick of it with the nearest event for us, so she was an obvious pick for us. But I think there are so many great people around our teams that we just picked one each and put them together. It was clear, as you said, to absolutely everybody involved that this had to be a success. Right, there were no points for second place. It absolutely had to work. I think Clarion had already been doing some planning with BDC, so I think they took the lead. And then the other ops managers sort of supported them, and they nailed it pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So same from my side. I think depending on at that point who had the longest to-do list, I guess. And then for me, I'm similar position to Piers. I'm very lucky that the team that I have based in the UK, they're all amazing, and I know that I could have asked any one of them, and they would have rolled up their sleeves and got stuck in. But Faye won. Faye drew the short straw. She won the competition, whichever way you want to look at it. And she's amazing. Her attention to detail, her personality, and the way that she can work with lots of other people. A lot of her portfolio is based on working with events that work on a host agreement basis. So she's really used to having to collaborate with people across the board, and that changes every year. It's a different venue every year, it's a different place every year. So she's really used to starting from scratch, which I thought was is a really good skill set to bring to the mix with something like this. And she knows obviously the vast majority. So her and Jess had worked together before, which always helps. So yeah.
And she gave up a holiday. I mean, everybody was working late. We were WhatsApping each other, but she actually gave up a holiday for this. So that's pretty...
she did. Yeah, she's amazing. I think she had like a long weekend booked somewhere, and she sacrificed it. And then she had something else booked in for during build up. But I think they did an amazing job coming together as a foursome. They really complemented each other. I think they worked out very quickly whose strengths were with what. Like Faye is so in the detail and she's so creative. I think her taking on, the signage and dealing with that side of things, and then each of the team members had their own kind of area of expertise. And I think that was just amazing to see how that kind of all came together on the day.
It was very natural. It was like they'd been working together, like kind of from, day dot, right? It was really great to see. But added challenges to this. We did actually only have 7 working days to deliver this. I know we were talking about a pilot quite early on, but then there was a pushback and another thing that happened, and you know, week by week went, and then all of a sudden it was, okay, it's happening, 2nd of September, go. 7 working days to be able to deliver this, and you know, there's added challenges with that, right? Especially also being in a lockdown and trying to pull everything together. What challenges did you kind of find?
It's really one better managed by the team who actually did the physical work. Our fantastic team of senior ops managers and ops managers that nominated themselves, or we nominated, whichever way they would like to describe it, to actually deliver the event. But I mean, the challenge is we're perfectionists as organisers, so any short space of time is never going to be enough time for people we live by lists and live by checklists of things that need to be done in order for an event to be delivered seamlessly. And as an organizer, you never ever get to the end of that list, because once you cross something off, there's always something you could do more, or you could put more detail into. So the challenge is, I think in the first instance, we considered the challenges were going to be how do we get 4 separate nominees from different businesses together, working together as a team within 7 days, turning out signage and an event plan with the help, don't forget, of our partner contractors such as yourself and the signage guys and all of the guys at the BDC. You know, that wasn't the challenge. The team were brilliant from day one. I think that was because we used a group of people who had been working with all of us back in the background throughout the year, so they knew where we'd got to and what our recommendations were. They'd helped us write exhibitor guidance, they'd helped us write risk assessments, and so it wasn't new to them. It was just a case of, right, let's get on and do it. So the challenges really would have been the time and making sure that we'd nailed everything that we wanted to do, but the team were brilliant.
I think more than anything, it's the time constraints, as you say, and working during lockdown. I know as soon as we pressed the button or had the go ahead, the team kind of literally pulled together super quickly to get on site for a site visit. Because of course, although some of them had worked at the BDC before, so much had changed even at the venue, because the venue had implemented lots of their own measures and had done lots of their own stuff as well, which also has its own complications. So from that very moment, it was literally, right, roll up your sleeves. Okay, I'm on the bus now to the BDC. I'm meeting everyone there, and that was it. I mean, it was a roller coaster of a week, and I'm not going to claim to have done anywhere near the hours that I know that they all did, as you said earlier. But I think again, it just shows when you put your mind to it. Operationally, we can turn things on the cuff. It would be nice not to have to, but hey, it's not the first show and it won't be the last show that we'll be asked to do on a tight turnaround. So hats off to the team for being able to do it and remaining calm.
And I think to a certain extent, the 7 days actually drove a lot of focus. I remember being on one call where, to a certain extent, we all wanted this to be a showcase for the industry of all the things, that we could do. And we got to a point on the call and we thought, now, hang on a minute. The audience is Public Health England and DCMS. We just need to show them what they need to see, because they're the ones that are signing off. They're the customer in this point. They're the visitors. And I think that sort of trimmed back the plans a bit, and we just focused on what they needed to see, rather than making it a big showcase. That really helped. But yeah, they did an amazing job, and it was great to see 4 leaders, I guess, because they're all used to leading their own shows, taking slightly different roles, leaning on their own expertise, but being supportive of each other, because otherwise you could have had a situation where it's too many cooks, and there would have clashed, but they came together brilliantly, I thought.
Absolutely. And no egos there either. It was a case of actually, let's just get the job done. I think you make a really good point there about the audience. I definitely felt the pressure when we had effectively the entire industry watching this, 300 industry kind of colleagues attending, all I'm sure with an opinion. Do you think that made it easier or kind of more of a challenge?
I think the main thing really for us is the goal was so uniquely communal in that we had one goal, and our goal was to prove that we could reopen and that we could be safe. And that's all that mattered. And so I think that piece where we kind of found the right people and then went, right, divide and conquer. We've just got to get this done amazingly to prove to the whole industry that, not to the industry, but really to prove to the government that this was okay, that like failure or not making it perfect was just not an option. And I think that was a conversation that, you know, I think when we had our volunteer at Clarion, that was it. It was, we have one goal, and our goal is we have to collaborate, we have to make this work, and it's going to be amazing. And I think the fact that everyone was so thirsty to just run a live show as well probably helped as well. Everyone was desperate to just get back on site and deal with suppliers. And as Ian said, I think everyone involved in that project, from venues and the suppliers and you guys, just, you know, with the registration, everything, just that there was no, I don't think there was ever, I thought it was going to be unusual, but actually it was a really great experience. Yeah.
And then you mentioned the visitors. Don't forget, like, the visitors, yeah, they were colleagues, but all of the people were invited through ourselves. We had to manage that so that we could ensure that we had an audience, but not an audience that was so large, but also that that there was an opportunity for people from most businesses to actually get a look at what we were presenting. A lot of those companies had fed into the work that we've been doing through things like the operations, the UK operations and the international operations health and safety groups at the AEO, so people knew what we were doing and they'd seen some of the stuff. But don't forget that these people were as desperate as we were to get a positive outcome, but not in such a way that they would behave themselves, but more the fact that their goodwill was with the project. People weren't there to pull us apart. They were there to get advice and help themselves and to see what was possible. And I think for all of us, including those of us that were involved in a bit more of the detail, were desperate to see, does the detail work? And people came along, and I think unanimously people felt that detail worked.
I guess so, akin it slightly to, you wouldn't want to be the organiser for Convex, right?
Yeah.
It's like the show for the exhibition industry, because of course everyone that turns up is going to know how to do it better, right? I mean, that's a bit of the nature of the beast. But from our perspective, I think what it did, we were quite strategic maybe in the invitations that we sent for the internal, because we recognised that there were certain event stakeholders that we thought would benefit from seeing All Secure in action. And they were the ones that maybe had either the show coming up the quickest, or the ones that had the most complications, or the ones that had the most queries on the All Secure standard and just couldn't visualize what it actually meant. So for us, it did, whilst it was definitely difficult, exactly for the reasons that we've said, you know, we're talking about our entire industry, but actually what it did afford us to do internally was for Faye to be able to demonstrate to a lot of those show teams and those stakeholders, this is what it actually means. Like, the reality is we can still deliver events. This is what it means. And actually, when we used the experience on the day to then realise what doesn't work, or what isn't realistic, and what isn't achievable, and how can we sway that?
With those kind of time constraints, is there anything that, you know, if we did have a longer lead time on this, that you would have liked to kind of see implemented?
Good question. Do you know, I think that they just, I don't think so. I think they really nailed it for, like Piers says, for the audience that came, absolutely, they completely nailed it. I don't think that there was anything that I kind of took a look at the day and gone, oh, probably would have spent a bit more time at that, or, you know, oh, they missed that. I think they did a great job. The attention to detail was second to none. Everything from all of the signage touches, all of the, all of the hand sanitizer that they had out, the flow of the floor plan, managing to pull together exhibitors. I mean, let's not forget, at one point we were literally looking at a floor plan with a whole ton of empty stands and going, oh, we should probably put some content on those stands. So I think all of that, pulling all of that together and managing to convince people to come and exhibit within that time, I don't think there was anything that they could have done better or differently. No.
I'd probably have badges.
That's what I wrote down.
Do you know what, actually, the mask thing was probably the thing that threw me the most. And I think because it had only just recently been mandated indoors, and it was really difficult to recognize people. And actually, I think that's why I'm saying the badges, is because actually it was hard to recognize people that you don't necessarily see every day or know that well, but you know through the industry.
Unless you were Miriam.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Miriam's very spottable. So yeah, badges.
Yeah, and that's all that I, when I was thinking about that question, that's all I've written down. I would definitely have printed badges. I'm a big one for the fact that badges are required. And it helps people to recognise each other much more quickly. It helps people to identify each other, and that in itself enables social distancing. Not because, oh, I don't want to talk to them, but you don't have to do that. You know, the extended conversation over establishing who somebody is in a potentially awkward fashion. But I mean, I wouldn't have done anything significantly different. I mean, and that in itself was verified, I think, by the fact that the feedback from the observers from PHE and DCMS seems to be that they wouldn't have changed anything either.
Yeah. I think actually the only thing, looking back, it just feels like such a long time really since we did it, but looking back, remembering back to that time, I think we would, I think the signage, the ground signage, once people were in the space, was quite difficult to see. So maybe either making it bigger or at eye level rather than being on the floor. But I think, you know, these are tweaks. They're not, there's nothing major that I don't think didn't work.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I can't really think of anything that they could have done better. And I think that focus is a lesson for us all as we get back to events. You know, there's changes across the industry, aren't there, in the capacity that we've got and the resource that we've got going forward. And as we invite people back to our events again, you know, we've got to be focused on what's the most important things that we can do, the most valuable things that we can do for the customers, and you know, cut out, I guess, some of the frills a little bit that take up a lot of time, but don't always add value, because we're going to have some constraints going forward as we all get back to running events.
We had a successful pilot in September, deemed successful, no changes from the government required, and then the news of a further delay. How have you managed that within your own organisations?
Well, I think we are lucky, I guess, in that my team is spread across a wider geographical area than the UK. And we have been lucky that some events have happened. There are areas within our region that are coming back quicker than others. And so there are green shoots, if you like. But it does put, you know, in my kind of, not necessarily Informa view, but in my personal view, it does in some ways put the UK at a disadvantage. You know, it would be very easy for those events, those peripatetic events that maybe were going to move around anyway, it would be very easy for them to just pick up and take root somewhere in Europe. You know, those kind of things I really do think as an industry we need to be making the government aware of. And I know that we've made some great traction with the government with recognition for our industry in its own right, but I don't believe it's really where anyone wants it to be just yet. I mean, it's fantastic the work that's happening with the cross associations, but there's still some way to go. So I think it is a blow. Like whatever way you look at it, it is still a blow and it's a risk and it could put us at a disadvantage. But ultimately, that's, you know.
Yeah, I guess from our side, you know, we had a number of shows at the end of the year, sort of November, December time, and we were really hoping that they would run. There was a couple in the UK, but also Spain and France. So we're not just delivering shows in the UK. So it was really disappointing, really, for everybody. Having said that, you know, it's given the team the opportunity to learn some other skills. We've been doing lots of other digital activity that we haven't done in the business before. That's not easy to do. That needs quite a lot of resource as well. And at some point or other, pretty much everybody in my group has been redeployed to help the business on that side. So that's been quite interesting. It's been interesting for them to learn some new skills and get involved in some different activity, but it's also shown how adaptable and professional and pretty awesome ops people are, frankly, that they can, they can adapt to a different role and still knock it out of the park. We've had some really complimentary comments about our team in the last few months, while they haven't been doing their normal job, but they've been doing something else. So yeah, people have been busy.
And I suppose that leads us on to our kind of final question, which is, how optimistic are you for the year ahead?
That's a really hard question. I think it depends what part of the world you're talking about. I think it depends on how quickly we can get rapid testing underway. And I really think that the vaccination programs and testing and, knowing that everyone in that space is COVID free I think that's the dream, isn't it? So that people can interact without the fear. And I feel like that's at touching distance. And I think we have to be positive, right? Otherwise, what are we still doing here? Yeah, I feel optimistic, but I think the first half of next year will be tough still. I think things are still changing quite rapidly. Yeah, I feel optimistic, but cautious.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd agree with that. I mean, I think what was just said was absolutely right. We've got to see the advancement of rapid testing, but I think we can actually see that now. I think the light at the end of the tunnel is coming there, and it will come sooner than we think, which will help us to open some of the doors that are still left closed. But I mean, at Hyve, we're really excited and hugely optimistic about the future of our events. From the point of All Secure, we've done everything that we could do this year to reassure ourselves that we know that we can put these events on safely. So rapid testing or not, we know that we can lower the R rate within our environments in which we manage. We know that we can do that, and we've proved it. So we absolutely know that we're not going to go backwards from that step. I said in an earlier answer that we wouldn't change anything. Well, but we'll still freshly risk assess everything, and so the changes in the future will be due to what the situation is at the time. But the really exciting thing for us, and the really the point of optimism here, is that we know through talking to our communities, so that is our exhibitors and our visitors primarily, that there really is no substitute for face-to-face events, and they are desperate to get back to our shows, to learn, to network, to trade, discovering new products, building relationships with new suppliers, which will be the cornerstone for getting our markets and the economy back on its feet. And then, however devastating the effects of COVID have been on our economy and on our markets and on our industry, there are things to take positivity from out of this. I mean, we have learned how to support our markets even more closely during this time through our online platforms and other environments to support them in the getting through this period. But we also have spent that time reassessing where we're adding value and what our events can do and where our events are important to our communities. And we know that when we bring those events back, we're gonna, we'll double down on all of the things that had the return on investment, return on time factors for our exhibitors and our visitors. And then on top of that, conversely, our exhibitors and our visitors have had an opportunity to really understand the value that the events that we run bring to them. So I can see when we open those doors, there's going to be a whole group of really excited people who are desperate to get back in front of each other and are going to be looking at events which, can seem, problematic to people at times. They can seem a pain, but I think people have had the chance to reassess it and remind themselves of where the value is and what we bring.
Kerrie?
Hugely optimistic. I mean, hey, we're going to get back on site at some point. But no, I think the bit that I'm most enthused about, as we spoke, is, look, it's given us the opportunity to look at those processes. It's given us the opportunity to upskill, to diversify, and to reshape things. And I think the combination of all of those things internally, plus the new enhanced collaboration that's going on at all different levels, and how the industry has come together, organiser, venue, contractor, everyone, I think it will only make us stronger going forward. And I'm really excited to see what we will deliver and how things will change.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think as an industry, we need to stick together. You know, in our industry, you don't really achieve anything on your own. No? We're all interconnected, and we all rely on each other. And I think that all the great industry collaboration that we've seen this year, there was some of it before. You know, there's more of it this year. We need to keep that going as we get into 21. But yeah, I'm really optimistic as well. I don't think it's going to be an easy ride at all. I think the start of the year is going to be pretty rough. And I think a lot of people have pushed back, you know, events to sort of the middle of the year to start. But I just hope that once we get through this difficult period that we're in, certainly in the UK at the moment, and we get into spring, you know, things will start to ease up a little bit. You know, there's news about the vaccine, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, hopefully we're on the upward trend now, and it's going to get better and better. And like Kerrie, you know, can't wait to get back out on site. You know, I think everybody in the industry's really missed that this year. That's the bit we do it for, and you get a real buzz and a real lift from being on site, and we haven't been allowed to do that this year. So I think that'll be a real tonic to the industry as soon as we can get back out on site.
Thank you all for taking the time to speak to us today.
Very welcome.
Thank you very much to Ian, Kerrie, Piers and Verena for taking the time to talk to us. It's great to see how these organisations are working together to support the industry as a whole. Next time, we'll hear from the ground team who delivered All Secure Expo, turning the All Secure standard into a fully functioning event. We'll see you next time.